Some of the questions you've asked, very insightful as far as like probing and finding, exactly what that is. I think, you got to have a good story. You got to have a message. You got to say to yourself at the beginning, what are you trying to say? I think an awful lot of, beginning authors, run into the problem of not thinking that clearly, thinking through that, before they get started. And then they get in that road and they forgot why it was that they started writing this book, this 350 page, opus, that you're going to loose upon the world. That's a long ride, and you need a map every once in a while to kind of remind you, what it is you're doing and why. So I think a lot of that, is important. I think, you have to have freedom. I'm very, very fortunate, to be with Viking Penguin Publishing. Like that, they're a grand house. Like that, they're a very literary house. They don't have that many, mystery authors, and I'm fortunate enough to be one of them. But even more fortunate in the sense that they really don't have any kind of any kind of predicate or codicils that they have as far as telling me what I should do or how I should do it. I can go in any direction and write about anything that I want to write about. I think, when I first started out, they wanted a couple of sentences, and then the first contract that I signed, after the cold dish, it said that it must it must be a mystery and have Walt Longmire in it. That's it. That was the only, major considerations that I had to take in, whenever I was writing one of the novels. I had to have Walt and had to be a mystery. Like, well, that's a lot of leeway. You can go in a lot of different directions and a lot of different ways, after that. And I think that the freedom, is a lot of it, to have that freedom to be able to do anything you want to do, however you want to do it, and know that the publisher's got your back. That's the other thing is that, I've talked about the structure a little bit, but another thing you kind of have to take into consideration when you're writing. I'm not writing about a New York detective, with a caseload of 60 homicides. I'm talking about a rural sheriff in Wyoming. Well, I can only have so many murders, in Durant before, Durant, Wyoming becomes murder capital #1. And so, to kind of relieve, some of that pressure, I started, doing them almost like a ball team. It's almost like a baseball team in the sense that I have home and away games is what I have. There'll be, one book where Walt is in Durant and in Absaroka County, and then I'll have an away, where Walt will be somewhere else. I've taken him, as far flung places as, Philadelphia, Vietnam in 1968. I've taken him all over the place like that, and I never want him to lose, where it is that he's from and the place that started these books. But then again, I also want to stretch it out a little bit and have him, in places where, the environs change a little bit. And then once again, where he doesn't have quite the resources that he normally has. And certainly Daughter of the Morning Star is that. It takes place almost entirely up in Montana. Well, it's not that far away, but it does take place on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation, which is a sovereign nation unto itself with its own police force, its own courts, everything. Like it's a completely different world. And so, Walt's, in that different world, exercising, his detecting abilities like that. And Daughter of the Morning Star deals a lot, with the plight of murdered and missing Indigenous women, which is, I think, one of the blights in Indian country right now. That there's such an incredible amount of women. I think that the FBI came out with a report, that more than 5,560 Native women went missing or were killed in the last year. Well, when you take into consideration what the percentages are that they make up, of the population, that's horrific. That's absolutely horrifying. And so it became, an important cause for me to kind of deal with. But then it became also a question of, okay, well, how are you going to deal with this? And that's when I started thinking about the girls' basketball team that I had seen play up on the Lame Deer, up in Lame Deer. And just how ferocious those games were like that. And I thought, okay, there's something to be said here as far as that's concerned, like that. And that kind of like lent me the opportunity to try and write this book. For me, I don't know how it is with a lot of other authors like that, but for me, it's like a horse race. I've always got like about a half a dozen ideas that are jockeying for position, to be the next book, and like I said, all those things that you take into consideration when you're choosing up that next book. But that they're generally I'll have a leader that will break from the pack and go forward like that, and then you think about once again where are these characters, what are they doing, is this a home away, is this a winter book, is this a summer book, is it fall, is it spring, all of these things like that. And so all of them kind of come into an opportunity. The other thing is like the big one for me, and I'm really happy that that you've mentioned it a couple of times here like during the interview, what's different. why do I want to write this book, and why is it going to be so completely different from all of the other books that I've done before? After writing 17 books, what's going to make this one special? What's going to make this one completely different from all of the others before? And I don't know, I can't get into too much detail. You're right. But what is it that's going to make this one so completely different from any of the others before? The only thing I can throw out would be, what if Walt Longmire was to wake up in the middle of an unknown town out in the street during a blizzard and stumble up onto the sidewalk and not know where he is, or more importantly, not remember who he is? Where do we go to from there?